Today I'm forging 3 insane swords, each inspired by a different character, in this new game called Bladesong. And our first character we're going to make a sword for is Sauron. Let's get into it. Before he was the Dark Lord of Mordor, Sauron was known as Meirin, a Maya, an immortal spirit created before the world itself. He served Aule, the god of smithing and crafting, and learned the art of making things that last. Unfortunately, he also learned a deep appreciation for order and telling everyone else what to do. So on this basis of Sauron, while I'm making the sword, I had a few things in mind. 1, I needed it to be big and obnoxious. And 2, I wanted it to resemble what he already had, such as his mace and his armor. So lots of jagged, pointy bits. Fun fact that in Tolkien's books, Sauron was closer to a wizard than the giant rustic dishwasher we see in the movies. When Melkor, later called Morgoth, rebelled against the creator, Sauron followed. But not because he loved chaos, but because Morgoth promised something better: total control. From that moment on, Sauron became Morgoth's most trusted lieutenant. Less screaming warlord, more evil project manager. During the First Age, Sauron ruled fortresses, commanded armies, spread fear across Middle-earth. He was a master of deception and could change his shape at will, appearing as wolves or serpents. He went by many names, including Gorthor the Cruel, which is never the name of someone you want to meet socially. So here I'm just messing with a hilt. I've got this idea of it being connected to the blade and having multiple points just sort of protruding out from it. I also end up adding this huge clad of metal around the center. I thought it was quite fitting because he is literally just a bulk of iron. In the Second Age, Sauron returned in disguise as Anatar, Lord of Gifts, appearing wise, beautiful, and absolutely trustworthy. He befriended the elves and taught them how to forge the Rings of Power, and then in secret, because of course he forged the One Ring, pouring much of his own power into it so he could rule all of the others. This would later prove to be a bit of a design flaw. When the elves realized what he had done, they removed their rings and war followed. Sauron reclaimed many of them, corrupting 9 kings of men into the Nazgul, terrifying servants who ride flying beasts and have never once passed the vibe check. He built Barad-dûr. Sorry if I butcher that, I'm really sorry. Ruled from Mordor, and for a time, his power was unmatched. Later, he allowed himself to be captured by the great island kingdom of Númenor, where he promptly corrupted it, and from the inside convinced its people to worship evil and commit human sacrifice. Sauron lost his physical body, and also the ability to ever look friendly again. In the last alliance of elves and men, Sauron was finally confronted. After a 7-year siege, he entered the battlefield himself, but was struck down when Isildur cut the One Ring from his hand. Instead of destroying it, Isildur kept it, proving once and for all that poor decision-making is humankind's greatest weakness. Through the Third Age, Sauron slowly returned as a shadow, then as a necromancer, and finally as the Great Eye, watching, waiting, and very impatiently searching for his ring. So I thought I'd try my hand at some engraving on the blade, so I wrote something and used an online Elvish translator for the script. Big brownie points for anyone in the comments section if you can actually read what this says. I'm not going to spoil it. After centuries of being lost, stolen, and fought over, the ring eventually came into the hands of a young hobbit named Frodo Frodo Baggins, yes, that's it, who carried it further than anyone thought possible, and then, right at the very last moment, decided he wanted to keep it. Why shouldn't I keep it? This revealed the ring to Sauron, who realized far too late that the fate of his entire empire now rests on a very small person standing next to a volcano. With the ring's destruction, Sauron's power collapsed entirely. His spirit was scattered, his dominion ended, and all because of one catastrophic failure to install guardrails. And Middle-earth was finally saved. And with that, the sword is finished. And now to roll the cinematics.
Build me an army worthy of Mordor.
that's the final result. I'm quite pleased with where this ended up. But moving on to our next character, which is Arthur Pendragon.
The most influential version of Excalibur comes from medieval English and French romance, where the sword is presented not merely as magic, but as a miracle of God. One of the earliest writers to describe this was Robert de Baron, in his poem Merlin, written around the year 1200. In this account, a sword appears embedded in an anvil set upon a stone in a church courtyard on Christmas Eve. According to the prophecy of Merlin, only the true king, the divine-appointed heir of Uther Pendragon, would be able to draw it free. So I began working on the blade here. I want it to be rather huge and quite over the top, very over-exaggerated. I'm working on basically making it the Christian version of King Arthur, so I'm thinking making it very Christian related, so my ideas are that I'm going to make it into some sort of cross. Many nobles attempt the miracle and fail. Arthur, still a youth and believing himself to be the son of Sir Ector, arrives only as a squire to his foster brother Kay. Unaware of the test, Arthur pulls the sword from the stone. When he later repeats the act publicly, Merlin reveals Arthur's true lineage, and the act is accepted as God's judgment. In the English tradition, this moment is not treated as sorcery, but as divine intervention, a visible sign that Arthur has been chosen to rule.
If you get to heaven, write this down, you get to heaven and you don't find me there, you have gone to hell.
In later versions, particularly the post-Vulgate cycle, the sword drawn from the stone is left unnamed and is soon broken during Arthur's early battles, most notably against King Pellinore. As you can see here, I've got most of the hilt sort of down. I'm using a lot of circles because that represents purity, and I plan to add a lot of things like gemstones and engravings along the hilt as well. The hilt is going to take up a lot of your eye. That is one of the things that you're going to look at the most. Merlin then leads Arthur to a lake where he receives a new sword, given in exchange for a future favor. This blade is Excalibur in its fullest form. A blade so powerful that any battle fought would be won. But Excalibur was never meant to make Arthur immortal. It was a sign of God's favor, not a promise that he would never fall. In the Battle of Camelot, Arthur still carried the sword, but he had lost its scabbard, and with it, his protection.
Basically, the scabbard was supposed to be as powerful as the blade. It just completely makes him immune to damage.
So here you can see I'm working on the handle and the pommel, keeping symmetry in mind and wiggling out any imperfection as much as I can. Excalibur is supposed to be a weapon that is made beyond human capabilities, so that is basically what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to cram in as much as I possibly can. At the end of Arthur's reign, during the Battle of Camelot, the wounded king orders his knight, Bedivere, in the English telling, to return Excalibur to the lake. After hesitation, the command is obeyed, and a hand rises from the lake to reclaim its sword. Arthur is then carried away to Avalon, after accompanied by Morgan le Fay. Believe it or not, King Arthur was actually originated from Wales, and the blade was actually called however the fuck you say it. As the story was retold across centuries, these older elements were not removed, but reinterpreted. Christian writers reframed Excalibur's power as divinely sanctioned, while allowing its mythological origins to remain beneath the surface. But during my design phase, I wanted to focus on the British/Christian version. Maybe I'll do its Welsh counterpart in another video. Tell you what, if this video gets over 1,000 likes, I'll do Excalibur in its Welsh origins. And with the sword complete, this is my version of Excalibur. And there we are, King Arthur's Excalibur. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Did I do it justice?
But now it's time for our final character, Blackbeard. You know, steel isn't always the sharpest weapon. Sometimes it's reputation.
And no pirate understood that better than Edward Teach, the man history remembers as Blackbeard.
So today, we're going to forge a blade inspired not by just a pirate, but a master of fear.
So first off, my thoughts going into this was that I wanted to make Blackbeard's sword somewhat brutal. Cutlasses, in my opinion, always come across as rather delicate. And from what I know of Blackbeard, he certainly wasn't delicate. Teach was likely born around 1680, probably in Bristol, England, one of the busiest ports in the Atlantic world. He could read and he could write, which already made him overqualified for piracy. During the War of the Spanish Succession, he may have served as a privateer, which is basically piracy with paperwork. However, his days as a privateer were numbered, as when the war came to an end, so was his employment. And there were no job seekers' allowance. By 1716, he joined pirate captain Benjamin Hornigold in Nassau, which at the time was less tropical paradise and more linked in for criminals. Then in 1717, he captured a massive French slave ship called La Concorde. He armed it with 40 guns and packed it with over 300 men and renamed it the Queen Anne's Revenge. By this time, Thatch began building a rather notorious reputation. But here's where it gets interesting. See, Blackbeard didn't just fight battles, he produced them. He was tall, broad, dressed in dark clothing with pistols strapped across his chest, because apparently one wasn't dramatic enough. His thick black beard was braided, and before battles he'd tuck slow-burning fuses under his hat. So when he boarded enemy ships, smoke curled around his face and sparks drifted through his beard. I mean, imagine seeing that in 1717 on a wooden boat in the middle of the ocean. You're surrendering immediately. And that's the genius, that there's no evidence that he routinely massacred crews. Most ships just gave up without a fight. Fear just did all of the heavy lifting. By 1718, at the height of his power, he blockaded the port of Charlestown, South Carolina. He stopped every ship entering or leaving and held prominent citizens hostage. And what did he demand? Medical supplies. Not gold, not silver, not treasure. Medicine, which honestly makes him either surprisingly practical or the most dramatic pharmacist in history. After he received it, he released all of the prisoners alive. We're not really sure exactly why he wanted medicine out of all things, but the most likely reason was because his crew was actually sick. It's quite common for pirates to get ill across long journeys over the seas, such as like infected wounds and yellow fever and even STDs such as syphilis. Soon after, the Queen Anne's Revenge ran aground off North Carolina. Accidental or intentional downsizing, historians still debate.
Captain!
Yeah?
He accepted a royal pardon and retired. And then unretired, because apparently piracy had better benefits. On November 22nd, 1718, Lieutenant Robert Maynard cornered him at Ocroke Inlet. Blackbeard was shot 5 times, cut more than 20, and still fighting. That's not a battle report. That's a Dark Souls boss fight. Eventually he fell, and his head was displayed as proof of his death. And so I forged this weapon in Bladesong just because I love this character and I love pirates in general, so I wanted to do one for him. And so we've reached the end, so let's take a look at the final result. And that was Blackbeard's Cutlass. I had quite a lot of fun trying this game out. Something about making deadly things really appeals to me. The game's not long been released on Steam Early Access, so if you're interested, why not give it a go? And thank you so much for watching my video. If you did enjoy it, consider dropping me a like down below, and if you really enjoyed my video, why not consider becoming a subscriber? I've got 28 as of recording this video, so I'll take anyone. I'm your humble hermit. Bonjour.